Okay, as a former school teacher, let's try this one more time. So, good afternoon. Hi. Oh, I had the hi. Oh, there you go. That's like what? Sometimes I say it's like that. Great Texan would say, all right, all right, all right. To kind of sort of get everybody focused. In Tennessee, that plays off a lot better because they don't know who Matthew McConaughey is. All right, so today I want to start off before we really even get into the topic. I'm going to give you a scenario, and I want us to break up into groups of like 4-ish. You can kind of do it right where you are. All right, and then I'm going to give you some ground rules on the scenario. So, and I know we come from diverse backgrounds. I'm not saying that everybody's going to have the same thought. And I don't know where everybody's coming from. So, I'm flying blind on this one. So, there you go. So, when the scenario is, for everybody in the room is, all right, you lost your job. Okay, you have a child or 2 children. And you're trying to provide for your wife or spouse and your 2 kids, knowing that you have some money in, but you don't have enough to pay your bills. And you know that you don't have a job. So what is the first 4 things that you would do when you find out, I just can't pay my bills? So break up right where you are. If you see a friend that's across the room, I'm sorry, but it's just too complicated. So right where you are, about 3 to 4 people. And all right, here's some rules, okay, before we break down. All right, so one is, all right, so these are like the grammar school rules. 2 before me. If you don't know what that means, if I say something, I have to wait till 2 people say something before I say it again. So we don't want to have that one person who's like, no, but I got one more thing to say. I don't care. 2 before me. Keep your statements short, 30 seconds or so or less. Because we can't do this for a whole hour. We're only going to do this for like 5 to 10 minutes. All right? Does that make sense? You know the scenario? Your spouse, 2 kids, 1 kid, have money, but don't have enough to pay bills, and do not have a job. First 4 things that you would do in that process. Let's go.
You guys want to?
Yeah, that'll work.
I put an order on things.
What's the first thing?
Somewhere up high up there, you let your church intellectually, that was actually practically that. Randy's talking about in terms of the shame of that. I don't have a problem with it. So the first thing we get shit on.
Yeah, correct. I don't think I'd be brain thinking about that. If I had to
Come on in, Robbie. Join the crew. We got chairs around.
Now, just doing the reaching out to our church, reaching out to our connecting our churches, specifically the acting, maybe I'm regular.
Okay, you got 5 more minutes, 5 down, 5 to go.
Yeah, good time to decide. They may be looking for somebody to do their job. It could be a place to not just give you money, but they can find it. It could be a job.
We have one up here. We have classes.
How would I find out?
That practical kind of stuff that maybe sure we're not big enough
You have some money to pay bills.
There's a lot of those kinds of organizations.
That's great.
Utilizing your time and networking.
Hey, 3 minutes.
I was trying not to
I would have thought of that in the actual situation.
That was something, no one, no
Oh, you're gonna get a severance. Ain't no severance.
Automatically that much closer to the edge.
Factory workers don't get severance.
Paycheck to paycheck. Right. I'd probably go to my some family
All right, 1 minute. 1 minute.
But that's what you have to do.
So I am a strange.
We don't get mercy calls like that easily. 10 years ago.
Reach out to industry when that has a
Look for sources like that.
Yeah, they're not.
AT&T or Verizon.
Yeah.
So when Toyota first brought me here, I drew down their budget by $4 million. Just looking at that.
Okay, time. All right. So if you can, try to get back to some semblance of order, so we can all kind of have. So this is an easy scenario, right? Like those 4 just wrote off your tongue, right? Y'all, everybody was in agreement, correct? Like everybody had the same 4 things to do, right? Okay, so I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong, but does somebody want to share like at least 1, no more than 2, of what they come up with? Like what's the first thing that some people came up with? Like, step 1 is what?
Craig.
Okay, great. Somebody else. Hey, we say it, do we believe it? Okay? Yes, sir.
Search all the job boards.
Search all the job boards. Okay.
Look what you have in your savings or.
Look what you have in your savings. Anything else?
Talk to your creditors.
Talk to your creditors. Okay. That is if you want to talk to your creditors. If you're in that spot, you may not want to talk to your creditors, just FYI. Okay.
Food bank.
Food bank.
Ask family for a loan.
Ask family for a loan. Okay. All right. So part of the reason I want to do this scenario is, and I whether it's your church, I'm not, again, I don't know what everybody's church makeup is. Okay. I know the church I work at, and I'll tell you that. But a lot of people that come walking into your church, the walk-ins will have a scenario that this may be the best scenario that they're coming in and saying, I need help with. So you can imagine, you guys who are doing this for a living are going, man, I'm struggling what to do. And I don't have the pressure of actually doing it. So you can imagine the strain and struggle and the pressure of someone who's coming in asking, I need help. So I'm saying to say, do we really have compassion on those who are coming in and saying, please help me? Or do we kind of look at them with that eye like, what did you do? Does it make sense? All right, so I want to kind of start off, just kind of sort of set the kind of mood. All right, so let me tell you just a little bit about me. Y'all know about Randy, but I won't make a long statement. So I grew up in Middle Tennessee. My dad was a country Baptist pastor, so we grew up in rural poverty. Went to college, Florida State, go Noles. Okay, there you go, that's right. After college, I moved to Chattanooga, became a school teacher, and I taught for 13 years in Title I schools in Chattanooga between middle school and high school, and also was a basketball coach, and then at the end was coaching in college, and God called me to ministry, and did community development for 4 years. When Randy stepped down as a senior pastor in New City, he said, help me build the New City Network. I did. So that's what he was saying for 10 years. So I traveled with him for several years, got married to a New Yorker. He said, we can live anywhere you want as long as it's the Heights, which is a neighborhood in Washington Heights. So we moved to New York. She actually really said a six block area. You can choose if you stay within that block. So did that for a couple of years, lived in New York, and then this position at a church in Huntsville, Alabama called Southwood Presbyterian Church came open. And I would say my church is probably similar to many churches here. We may be a little bit larger, but the breakdown is highly educated and wealthy church that lives in they live in an affluent neighborhood, and the church is an affluent neighborhood. Does that sound familiar? Okay, so we don't have a ton of walk-ins. We have a few because once the word gets out that this church helps, streets talk, people come in. Okay, so we don't live in an area where there's foot traffic. People have to actually make a move to come to us. So that's kind of sort of the neighborhood that we are, and we knew that when we moved down. And so my role is the director of missions and church planting. And, deacons and community development, all this is kind of sort of beneath that right there. So that's kind of a little bit about me. All right, so I want to hit a couple of topics today. One is some of the potential pitfalls of what it looks like to do mercy ministry that leads to development. So if I'm generalizing and you're saying, this is not me, great. I'm glad you're not doing this. And you're saying, I am doing these other things, wonderful. I don't have time to interview everybody to find out what they are or not doing. I'm just going to hit highlights and topics. Does that make sense? So if you're offended, I'm sorry. Say that in advance. All right. So let me pull up. So unlike Randy, I can't remember everything that I'm supposed to say. Randy's got it down. So the first thing I want to talk about is like having realistic expectations. Okay, people have coming in crisis into your church to say, I need help with X, whatever X may be. And do you have realistic expectations? Randy mentioned earlier there's actually a different culture. You're coming in from middle-class culture and you're having a conversation with someone whose life is in crisis. And they're always in crisis potentially. What is it like for you to sit down and have a conversation with them and understand they may not know exactly what to do the first 4 steps. They may or may not have ever been in this situation before. So how do you actually talk to them in a way that honors them? So one of the things you want to do on that is, on Sunday morning, you do you, but I never have any meetings on Sunday morning. So when church people come walking in, I need to talk to you right now, make an appointment. It's just like if you have a doctor in your church, do you ever walk up to them and say, man, look, I got my bunion killing me right now. You got 10 minutes I'd love to spend to talk to you. And like one of our deacons is my doctor, and Brian would say, Robert, love you. Can you make an appointment for Tuesday or Wednesday? You have a little time there. One, because he wants to honor me and spend the time that I need so I can say, this is what I'm hurting at. This is what's actually happening. So he wants to invest in me with that time and honor what I have to say. It's the same with mercy. When people walk up to you at church, most of the time y'all are doing something at that particular moment. You're setting something up, you're talking to someone, whatever the case may be. So one is, I kind of have a policy, we don't meet on Sunday morning. I can give you a form, but I'm not taking that time to really sit down because I have a worship experience that I want to also enjoy. Come back on Tuesday or Wednesday. If you're saying this bill is that important, today is not the first day you knew about it. You can't pay that bill on Sunday anyway. Okay? So one, don't meet on Sunday, have an appointment time set up. You can give them an application if you have application. Does everybody here have an application for Mercy Ministry in your diaconate? I highly recommend you have at least, not a 10-page form. We're not going to school. This is not the GRE. Have a 1-pager. I don't need to have all your kids' names and everything down. I can ask those questions. So have a form, intake form, to say, this is who I am, this is what the need is. The pertinent information, boom, 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 boom. So one, I do not meet, so I need to have realistic expectations that you're not going to listen to me at that moment to say, yes, I'll wait till Tuesday to have a meeting. And so for us, if somebody comes in asking for help, and you're not a member, there is a minimum of a week turnaround. we're not gonna meet that immediate need today. It just ain't gonna happen. Except, so our deacons have, because we have enough in our budget, that every deacon has the ability to meet the immediate need, if they think it's legitimate, up to $150 at that moment. Somebody comes in and says, I need help. You need help with gas? You need food that day? You need something. The deacon can go and take you to the gas station, put gas in your car, bring me back a receipt, we'll write it up, and they can get reimbursed. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any policies around that? They do. Yeah, because there are times that you don't need to get the deacon together to say, hey, this guy needs a tank of gas. What do you guys think? Just give him a tank of gas, okay? I'm not saying you always need to give him a tank of gas, but you have up to $150 at that moment. Some people have 75, some people have, just we're able to do that, and also where the location we are. And now if you're trying to buy a tank of gas and it's a truck, $75 may get you to the grocery store, may get you to the other side of town, but it ain't get you much farther. I can imagine what it would cost in Dallas. Good Lord, you guys got to drive everywhere. Metroplex ain't playing. Okay. Yeah, that's sprawl. Code for large. So as you're walking with somebody, and Randy kind of hit a little bit, but how well do you know the community? And what I mean by the community is, one is the resources that are involved in the community. What ministries are there? What nonprofits? Who can they go to that you can have access to? So some of y'all may support different ministries that are in your neighborhood. So we try to leverage that. When somebody comes in and says, I need help, like I don't have a place to live. There's a housing ministry that we support in Huntsville. I can pick the phone and say, hey, I have X person coming in. We want to walk with them. Do you have any availability? They may not, but they might possibly. So we try to leverage the resources that we support that may not be in our particular area, but are in our city. So do you know the resources that are available? And that's not always just ministry, but that's also public, okay? So it could be just a nonprofit somewhere. But here's one that most people don't really take time to invest in. Do you understand what the true issues are in the neighborhood? And I think this is where people kind of sort of like, well, no, I've heard. Like, do you know the stakeholders in that neighborhood and what you say, this, we're here to serve? And I know, who was it that said, I might have been here, said, we live in a neighborhood that is, middle of affluent neighborhood. You'd be surprised, even in affluent neighborhoods, of the issues that are there, because a lot of people are living beyond their means so they can live in that affluent neighborhood. Okay, not everybody, but there are a few people there. So with the issues that are there, or maybe another side of town that you're partnering with another church or whatever, like what kind of demographic work have you done? What kind of investment have you done in that neighborhood to have a better understanding of what are some of the issues? Not that you think they are, but actually those that are living in that neighborhood say, this is what bothers me. As an example, working with somebody in a neighborhood, and the church that was kind of partner here was convinced they need a school. We need a school, because they didn't have a legitimate school in the area. But talking to the residents, and the guy who was kind of sort of the stakeholder of the neighborhood was like, no, we need a medical clinic first, because if we don't have health, it doesn't matter what kind of school we go to, because we're going to die. But this pastor was convinced they need a school because look at their education, their dropout rate, he went through all this stuff, and that's legitimate. But the neighbor is saying, we're for that, but this is our first priority for us. So do you honor the neighborhood by truly investing in those that live there, to understand the stakeholders, who they are, and ask them questions, so that way you have a better understanding of how you can walk alongside that neighborhood and people that live there. Does that make sense? Any questions?
How are you supposed to find out, man?
I just got finished saying, invest in the neighborhood. So one, your dollars count. So like, this is one thing I always recommend is where you go, especially if you want to invest in a neighborhood, do you spend money in that neighborhood personally? Not that our church go and they do mission trips like, say, Robbie's neighborhood. But hey, we go to Richardson and we do a mission trip there. But if you want to invest in that neighborhood, where do you get your haircut? Where do you actually go to a coffee shop? You spend money there, you go to a restaurant, and go to the same place every week so they get to know who you are. So that way there's a trust that's being built up. Because you got to earn the right to be able to speak into somebody's life. And to do that, you need investment in time and energy. Like if I walked in here, y'all may know me because I'm PCA. Okay? But how many people do y'all trust that come, y'all are Texans, and y'all have a reputation, right? Y'all just don't trust anybody, correct? Am I wrong with that, or like, let me know if I'm not on point here. Okay, you just don't walk in like, oh, where you from? Come on. California? Love you, come on. Okay? There's a, like, why are you here in my neighborhood? Like, why'd you move from California? There's a protocol thing that you kind of go through to get to know them before you truly trust them, right? You don't trust them anyway?
We
You
don't
shake your
trust-
head like, nah, I ain't never trust them.
Nobody from Alabama anyway.
Oh, wow. Who said nobody from Alabama? Oh, wow, there you go. Okay, South Carolina, I feel you. Okay, jealousy, I got you. Not roll tide, but kind of hard to argue. But with that, if you're that way with your neighborhood and your friends, what makes you think that other people are different? We just kind of roll up in there and assume people are excited to see us because we're bringing the good news and we're bringing financial resources. But sometimes, and we think that they should be excited because we're giving them a seat at our table. But a lot of times we've got to realize they already had a table. And we don't know that until we've asked them and have a conversation with them. Okay? So your dollars and your presence matter. So if I want to be a part of that neighborhood, I need to invest in that neighborhood with my time, energy, and financial resources. Okay? I'm not going to say, here's the 5 things you need to do. Again, we're only doing one workshop, so I hope you don't feel like when you leave, you'll have a game plan to say, this is how I'm going to attack the neighborhood, we're good to go, I got a detailed plan. These are highlights that you can kind of use to help you as you go on this journey. Does that make sense? Okay, so I always ask questions. Does that make sense? You feel me? So I do like a response. Just going out there. Okay, so these are the potential pitfalls that may happen. If you haven't done that, most people then will say, there's a need in this neighborhood, we're going to develop programs, as Randy mentioned about the difference between like Mercy, starts with charity, eventually go to Mercy. Because nobody here wants to feed the same people for 20 years, right? So you have the same people coming in all the time and you're thinking, man, we got to do something to help this family, this group of people, this neighborhood, whatever the case may be. And so then you either partner with a ministry or you develop your own programs, like who's heard of Faith and Finance? At the Chalmers Center. Who's heard of Jobs for Life? Okay, so some of you guys have heard, these are programs that have kind of been birthed out of PCA ministries of how to help people that have very low economic resources to manage their money well. That's Faith and Finance. Jobs for Life is a program that not teaches you how to like do a job, but learn how to do soft skills. Like how to fill an application out, how do you look somebody in the eye, what does it mean to show up and work on time, how do you get work ethic, what are some of the unwritten codes that you need to understand why you're not getting a promotion. It may not be because they don't like you. It could be you're wearing shorts every day and you're in customer service and they're saying that you need to actually dress a certain way. I mean, those are the kind of things that Jobs for Life kind of teach. So those are wonderful, but when you haven't done the investment to understand the neighborhood and what's happening, you develop systems and structures and programs, and as you do that, you have a tendency to develop programs for your personal outreach and that you guys will feel a benefit. What I mean by that is when you've helped somebody, most anybody, because we all have heard that it's more blessed to give than receive, and we've given Christmas gifts, we've done all these different things, and we feel better when we've done it. It's the same with programs. When I show up and I've given my time and I've got to meet little Johnny Jr. and little Mary Alice, I feel better because look, I've helped them do X. And so it's given my church, and those are part of my church, volunteer opportunities, which is not in itself a bad thing, but you have to ask yourself, are you developing systems for your church to have volunteer opportunities, or is it really there to help the people they say they're intended to help? Does that make sense? And I'm saying this because this happens a ton. And they'll go, oh, but it's so successful. Nickels and noses, money and people doesn't necessarily mean success. There are a lot of programs that have people coming in that they're there when they're kids and they get to high school and then also they disappear. So it's not just the fact that people show up, but what is the measurables in growth and who you're there to serve. So one of the things I always kind of promote, if you are doing a ministry or part of a ministry that is working with high school and up, and they have been around for at least 10 years or longer, and they do not have anybody who's went through their programs that is in a position of authority, whether it's on the board, executive team, running a program, then you have to ask yourself, who are they really there to serve? Because you have the same people doing it for 30 to 40 years and nobody from the community that has gone through the program is in that situation. Like, we've all been touched by somebody, and what we want to give back because it meant so much to us, right? So if not, then it makes you wonder who they're really to serve. Any questions about that? Because that can be a little bit fascinating on some people. Yes, sir.
I just have, maybe this is too complex of a question for right now, but just a little bit of background. So the church where I'm a member, and I'm fairly new to the DFW area, but it is definitely a commuter church.
Okay.
The vast majority of the people that serve in our church come from fairly long distances.
Okay.
How do you develop the culture of serving the physical neighborhood where the church is?
Sure.
And as a result, what our church does is we minister in Dallas, we minister in other
Sure,
parts
like
of
small
Fort
groups
Worth.
or missional community kind of thing?
Well, we don't do small groups because people are so spread out, but the ministry, the mercy ministry we do is not our geographic neighborhood, it's in different parts of Fort Worth, it's in Dallas, it's
Sure.
whatever. And I think as a result, I don't necessarily think our church has a clear vision of our immediate neighborhood.
Sure.
It's broader than that, and so what do you do with that?
Well, the first question I would ask is, what is our goal and ambition? Like, what is our desired outcome? What do we want to do as the session and the leadership? Because trying to force feed the church, say, y'all need to be involved with this neighborhood, and the session's not bought on to it, then you're just spinning your wheels. Like, one of my lines I like to use is, the session will only move as fast as the slowest elder. Okay? So you gotta have folks on board. So one is laying out, sitting down, saying, what is our vision? Where we're gonna be in a year, 3 years, 5 years. If we say we wanna do this neighborhood, this is our focus, we wanna be intentional, then the leadership has to put forth the resources to invest, like time, energy, saying, we're gonna work on this neighborhood. We're gonna find the ministries, we're gonna do this. That is only because, I'm not saying you have to do it. I believe it's biblical, I would wanna do it. But working in a middle-class church, I also understand people are gonna do what they're gonna do. If they live in these neighborhoods saying, I don't have the bandwidth, it takes me 40 minutes to drive here from whatever location, I do whatever ministry, and then I gotta drive home. It's just, I got a family, I got all these other obligations, and that's legit, I'm not saying they're not. So that's where the leadership has to lay out a vision to say, God has placed us here. We need to own this as a parish model or whatever model of church. So we need to actually start developing that system here, and then people will either buy in and move here, or other things will happen. But if the leadership does not set that vision and cast it for the congregation, it ain't gonna happen. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, we're ministering, just not in that neighborhood. And
Well,
I don't know that we've ever asked ourselves that question.
Yeah, I mean, where do we wanna be in a year? Where do we be in 3 years? Do we wanna have the investment to say, this neighborhood we kinda own and wanna be intentional, and maybe not, I don't know. I don't know your congregation, but that's the question. And trying to get the session and the pastoral leadership on board. And then you get the deacons, because, the deacons have a hard time operating if the session has not given them a vision. Because, deacons aren't just gonna go out and just wing it. Like, oh yeah, I'm a long ranger out here, I'm just gonna start giving money and just do whatever and invest in this neighborhood. I mean, there's a few guys that'll do stuff, but most of the time, like, the session kind of lays it out, like, this is our goal. This is our vision, this is our thought process, this is the neighborhood we want to be a part of. I'm not saying the deacons can't think for themselves, so please don't hear me that. But I am saying that, the deacons are gonna look and say, hey, you guys are the elders, y'all laying out, you're casting vision for our congregation, as well as the diaconate. Is that, I don't know how many pastors are in here, but FYI, that happens. Okay. Any other questions around that? Okay. So it's not all about pitfalls. I just want to hit a few, and then we also want to get some policies. Okay. So that kind of leads to progress. So, like, what outcomes and measurables do we want to have? So, like, even when we went to Southwood, it had a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year plan of, like, where do we want to be at this time? And so I think a lot of people don't put down a roadmap. I mean, people don't have to call it a roadmap. You can call it whatever you want to. But what is our desired outcome for this ministry that we're doing? Is the measurable money that we have, a certain amount of money that we're able to give out? Is it measurable about people? Is it measurable about, like, we have people that are at this level, and now they're, economically stable at this level, I don't know what the measurables should be for everybody. Like, I have ideas, but I'm not gonna say, this is what you gotta have. But you need to actually chart those measurables, because you don't even know if you're actually being successful by if it's just give money away. Like, at the end of the day, what does that really mean? That you gave $50,000 a year? Yay. But, like, what was your return on investment? How did that look in the neighborhood? Was there different chatter, so on and so forth? So this is where I think it's important to invest in those nonprofits, in those ministries, in those areas and the stakeholders that are already there, because they can help you flesh out what your vision is and say, in a year from now, this is our measurable that we want to be here. 3 years from now, we want this. But just as the church has to have a vision for discipleship in the congregation, the diacon has to have a vision for not just Mercy Ministry, but for that neighborhood or the area that you guys are focusing on, whether it's your area or some other area. Does that make sense? Does anybody have anything like that in their church? You guys have laid out, so this is our vision, and this is our measurables. In 3 years, we want to be doing X.
We do.
Okay, wonderful. And does it make things a little bit flow easier? Could you kind of sort of go by plan, or like, a little rough?
We're kind of a fluent membership, but we're
Okay.
in a neighborhood that's surrounded by apartments, and it's not a fluid area by any means.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
yeah, we partnered with an elementary school.
Mhm.
We got kids, so we have kids from that school in our church twice a year for a series of like 8 weeks, which brings their parents in. So
Wonderful.
it's a partnership. It took years to get there. For an public elementary school to let you in as a church, takes a long time.
Yes.
And then we have mentors that we go into the elementary church, and we're there with them. Talk about Jesus unless they ask. That
Sure,
gives us the
no.
opening.
You gotta follow the
And
rules.
that's really been our focus for the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Has been through that school.
So Randy, or this is where me and Randy differ, just let you know. Randy be like, always go talk to the principal. I'm like, yes, but if you don't talk to the secretary, you have no idea what's gonna happen. Talk to the secretary, believe me, because she knows who and what is happening.
And the school counselor.
100%. So you need to talk to the principal, because if they ain't on board, then you're dead in the water. Definitely talk to the administration, but that's why I was like, hey, talk to the secretary as well. Because even the principal's like, well, they go, come here. Let me tell you, go talk to Ms. Johnson. Ms. Johnson does this, that, and the other. She might be somebody who help you. Trust me. Yes,
Can I say one thing? You're right, because when the school came in to talk to our membership, it was the secretary that came in, not the principal.
There you go. Didn't even know. That's a mic drop kind of thing.
And they have a big advantage there at Fort Worth. Cynthia Scott is the secretary, and the kids come in at the end of the day, 15 or 20 kids, and she gives them candy, but not until they talk about their day, and she resolves problems they have, and they really look forward to seeing her. And sometimes people come and help with homework, but she said, if I find one candy wrapper, no one gets candy next week.
There you go.
There's accountability there.
There is. So I'm going to kind of get to a program that I have that Randy mentioned, but right before that, this is one thing that most churches struggle doing, they just don't think about it, is have you evaluated the skill sets that you have in your own congregation? Many people say, I want to do after-school tutoring. Okay, if you have people that are working 24 hours a day, it's hard to develop leadership as well as volunteers to do this. As an example, there's a church that they want to do after-school tutoring. They wanted to work with the elementary students. And so we're having this conversation, and through conversation, they started realizing, as we're fleshing this out, that they had a ton of medical people in their church. So they reached out to the junior college, community college in their neighborhood, and said, like, is there things you need? They're like, hey, we need an alternative certification for nurses. So instead of doing after school for the elementary kids, they started a nursing or certification program. And now it's actually been owned. They meet at the church, but the community college now basically sanctions it. And when you graduate, it's like getting an associate's degree from this community college. And it all started because they assessed the resources and said, oh, man, we have so many medical people in here that can actually equip and train. So they pivot. But I think we have a tendency to focus on, this is the need. Like, okay, we did assess the neighborhood and say, hey, they need X, whatever X may be. We're going to try to meet that immediate need without understanding you don't have the skill sets within your congregation, but you have a different skill set. So do you do assessments? So this is kind of rhetorical. Do you really do assessments to find out not the spiritual gifts, but like what kind of jobs and what the skill sets you have within your congregation? And I think that's a huge missing piece that most people don't really kind of lay out to say, what do we have? And maybe that need may not be met here, but it could be met at a different neighborhood that another church may be there, and we can partner and bring some resources to that neighborhood that we didn't think about before. Does that make sense? Okay, so with it, so Randy kind of mentioned there's a church in Chattanooga called First Pres. And so the deacons and I have been doing the journey, kind of your point, even that church, it wasn't like a 2-day thing and all of a sudden now they have a program set up. This is a long journey. So just understand that if you have a roadmap, you can at least kind of figure out if you're kind of making progress. But we started 10 or 11 years ago because, and it didn't start out with the best intention, I'm just going to be honest. So they call themselves First Presers, for those, which is kind of weird. But people who attend First Pres is like, oh, we're First Presers. All right, you do you. So had a conversation with their deacons and like, we want to have ministry opportunities for First Presers, and we hope those coming in get something out of it. That's kind of how it's presented. And so right now in the room, you're going, oh, that is crazy. Who would do that? But it's amazing how we may not say that language, but that's what ends up happening. Again, when I said earlier, we want to have volunteer opportunities because this is what God has called us to serve, right? But we don't always develop systems and structures with the right motive. Now, there's a good ending to this, so I'm not saying that that's how it ended. So that was the initial conversation. And I was friends with the deacons, so it was like, ooh. So I said, let's kind of go this journey together. So we sit down, and they have financial resources, so they're able to do some things that maybe other churches weren't able to. So they want to do some developmental programs through their diaconate of those that come walking in. All right? So first they started trying to figure out relationships, and they tried to figure out faith and finance. They tried all these different areas of development, and then they kind of sort of pulled together and so they really kind of focus on that. So now they offer several classes that when somebody comes walking in and says, I need help with my rent. So one, they only do this on Wednesday. Somebody comes in any other time, they're like, come back on Wednesday, and you can have a meeting with the deacon. You can have a meeting right off the bat with the deacon if you come in between this time and this time on Wednesday. And the deacon says the same thing. All the deacons have the same kind of line they say. When they come walking in, it's like, we can help you with our immediate need today. Say it's $100 for electric bill. Okay, we can help you with that today, and we won't help you again for 13 months, for over 12 months. Okay, that's another policy I highly recommend. If you help somebody now, especially not a member of the church, you're not goodwill. You're not going to continue to do this. So if I help you today, I'm not helping you again for another year. So this way, like you were saying earlier, like how do you help people? Somebody asked a question like, they keep coming in. Well, come in today, come back in a year. And it's tough sometimes. I'm not saying the need is not legitimate, but this is the policy that we have. We're not helping again. So they're not again, come back in a year. But if you're willing to invest in us with your resources, which is your time, energy, we want to invest in you with our resources, which is our programs, our financial, and our connections. So we're investing in each other. And language is an important thing. We have a tendency to just kind of sort of talk to somebody without understanding how important language is. Things like, we're investing in you because we want you to have some self-worth. And we're asking you to invest in us because you have to be able to invest in us as well. I call this a value exchange. I got something you need, but you got something I need. Okay, so let's do this together. We're going to exchange these different values. And so the next part, they said, we're having dinner tonight, and we have these programs that are going to be right after dinner. We're asking you, would you mind staying and being a part of dinner and then staying for the programs? If you want to, you're more than welcome to join, and we can put you in the program next week. If not, then we will still write you that check because you came and you tried. Okay? And most people, they actually join the programs. And so they start off with relationships, faith and relationships. What does it mean to have good biblical relationships with family, with coworkers if you're working, with your neighbors, who you come in contact with on the street? Like, what does the Bible say about having healthy relationships? So that's kind of their holding tank. And it just repeats. They have a curriculum they've been able to develop. So that's the first class you go through. Then there's a program called Faith and Work, which is also developed by the Chalmers Center and a couple other ministries. And what that is a little bit more of work, jobs for life, but a lot more meat on it. But they have 2 8-week programs they go through, okay? And then after that, then they go through faith and finance, okay? Which is another program, so that's another 8 weeks. So you got 8, then 8, and then 8, and then 8. So you've had 4 8-week programs, that's 32 weeks. That's a long time you ask people to come. Every Wednesday night, maybe every night you're off. Now, there is a financial catch. So they pay you $25 for each class that you attend. Okay? And if you miss a class, you can miss 1 for 8 weeks, but if you miss 2, you have to start back over to 0. You get nothing until you get all the way back up to where you were before. So if you go 7 weeks and you miss a program, and then you miss another one, you go back all the way back to the beginning, and you have to go all the way to the end, basically, before you get anything. But what they realized that people were missing, or if they were finishing, and there's 2 more classes, I forgot. So if you went through all these programs, the last is faith and leadership. Because eventually they understand, we as deacons and elders, we don't need to be teaching this class. If it's truly about investing in the neighborhood, we're trying to bring that leadership in you. And we want people that went through the program to have ownership, and so they're teaching the class. So through all these years, they did it for years, but now there's not a deacon that teaches the class. It's the people that actually went through the program that teaches it, and the 2 ladies that run the program, they're actually graduates. And I knew they kind of arrived when they were telling the elders what to do, and the elders were listening. Which was pretty amazing, because they don't listen to, say that with love and respect. But when she was like, Miss Pam was like, I need you to do this, this, and this, and they're like, yes, ma'am, we do it. I was like, no. So they were part of that. And so with it, they've had probably 14 people from their programs through all those, and there's been a lot of people who went through, but 14 have actually joined the church, okay? So that's pretty amazing. And then the last class that they offer, which is kind of the first, is Bible stories. So this is the only class on Sundays. Every other class is offered on Wednesday. But on Sundays, for those who come, I know we're PCA, and we have a tendency to believe everybody has a certain theological base that is really high. But most people don't understand, like, the regular principle of worship. Okay, that's not like a typical conversation. Like, what do you think about that? Do you believe that's actually biblical? I mean, no, they don't get into those kind of conversations. And, you know, it's like, hey, don't tell you about Daniel and the lion's den. It's just pictures and stories. And it's amazing how many people come in. And that's a Sunday school class they teach on Sunday that is taught by 2 elders' wives. So I highly recommend, if you're bringing people into the church, offer an alternative so people feel like they're actually part of the journey. Does that make sense? Okay. So those are the classes they offer. So so as they're offering this through the years, they realized that people were finishing the class and asking, could they stay? They're like, well, you're not going to get paid because you already went through things. Some people had, they were homeless when they started, but now they have a place to live, and some people had jobs. Not everybody was a success story where they had a job that they really wanted. It could have been a job that may be a little lower than they really thought economically. But they were doing something a little bit different. And so they realized it was really the relationships that were being built, that they wanted to be part of a community. And this was their community. They had built these relationships with some people at First Pres, but other people that were in the same season of life that went through struggles. And so they're people that have been a part of this program for over 3 years. They're just there on Wednesday. I can walk in now. They go, hey, Brkout calls me Coach B. Like, hey, Coach B. I'm like, John, wow, still here. Yeah, bro. I'm like, all right, you do you. So it's not just about the program. It's about the relationships and the family that these people have actually joined together and locked arms. And so they actually, I don't have the numbers they have of how many people they realized that the financial component was a carrot on the initial end, but that became less and less more important to people because the relationships really overtook that. Does that make sense? Which is a little counterintuitive than you would think, right? Because you think it's the money that brings people in. It is the money that brought people in, but it's not the money that kept them there. Any thoughts, questions, or comments? Yes, sir.
Do you require them or request that they attend your church if you're going to come there for a
No.
Don't require them.
No. Because here's the thing about it is, like, say, Southwood. Now, we're not park cities. We don't have the most intimidating. But when we went to visit, my wife's like, this is like a hotel, the lobby. I mean, it has a big fireplace, and it's really nice. To bring people in our church is extremely intimidating. So we encourage them to go to church. Even the First Pres, they have a tower. I don't know another church that actually has a tower in downtown anywhere. So it's 10 stories and they have a tower. It's pretty wild. So you're asking somebody to come, and it can be, and it's not all African American. It's a very mixed group, but they're still coming in from a very vulnerable place. And so if it's about the relationship, you want them to come on their own free will, but not to require. Kind of like Randy saying, hey, we don't give loans. We don't require, but we do encourage.
You said,
Cash meals.
the value exchange. You said,
Yes.
you have something that I need.
Yes.
And I would like to hear you elaborate on what is that?
What I need?
Yeah, what
What do I have that you need?
do they have?
You
that
personally?
No. Yeah, not me personally.
So I've known Robbie for a long time, so that's,
But, yeah.
go Wake Forest, right?
Go Deacons. The Deacons.
Yeah, that's right. The demon deacon, so I don't know how you really interpret that one. Like, go.
That's another side show.
It's another conversation.
Yeah.
This is not my language. I've kind of sort of taken this, but a lot of people say the United States is a melting pot. You know, everything's all blended together. But it's not really a melting pot that we're talking about, because you understand when you put things together, there's usually one thing that dominates the flavor of that pot. Okay? And so we say, oh, we're a melting pot. No, we don't want to have a melting pot. We want to have more of like a potluck meal where everybody brings a dish. That way there's individual flavors that can be tasted and go, man, that's awesome, I love that. But we have a tendency, because people are coming in, no matter what we try to do, there's always going to be this weirdness when people are, because I've been in situations when I was younger where I had to ask for help at my church. And no matter if these were my friends or not, it's very complicated and it's hard to muster up the courage to go. And I know there's people that do this for a living. So I'm not saying that everybody that you come in contact with has pure motives. Like they're coming in the first time they do it. There are some people, this is like, you feel like this is their job. And they can tell you a story that I've even helped people that come in with some stories like, bro, you put some time and energy in that story. Like that did not come like easy. Like I want to help you out because, bro, that is like your job. Like, you need to go and be like a writer somewhere because that's amazing. Okay, so just FYI. But with it, I want to honor you. And with it, so there's a couple of questions that I usually ask when I really get to know people. It's ministry, but I think it really goes all the way down is, how do I help you be successful in what God has called you to do? I think we don't ask those questions. So my wife has this, she also is in ministry, she says this line is, be more curious than certain. We have a tendency to assume we know why they're in the situation they are, why they're this way, why that happened. We can go through a long list of assumptions that we make. It was like me coming in here, assuming everybody comes from the same type of church. Maybe, but I don't know that. You know, y'all don't know me, so on and so forth. So we haven't earned the right to be able to speak each other's lives. So one, be more curious and certain, ask the questions, because that conversation may be truly rich with just things that you never dreamed of. So it's not about just the financial resources, it's also about the relationship that I'm building. And who knows what you might bring to the table, I have no idea. You might have the skill set that could blow me away that, like, we have been looking at as a church for somebody who actually can do this. This is amazing. Would you mind? Whatever it could be. I don't know. But I think part of it is like going through the process of saying, how do I help you be successful? And letting them speak into that journey. And when you do ask somebody like where they want to be in a year, like, don't ask them about where you want to be in 5 years. If they're coming in your office and say, I need help with whatever, and you can tell that they're always in crisis, don't ask them for a 5-year plan. Where you want to be in a year. Because people can't even see past tomorrow. So again, try to honor them in their journey. So again, a couple of, we don't have time to really get into the policy and procedures that most every diaconate needs to have, but one is, it's okay to meet the immediate need at the moment. It's okay to help somebody, but not help them again for another year. But eventually, if you're helping people, like mercy, or charity, as Randy calls it, needs to eventually flow to development. Because if not, the goal is not to feed the same people for 20 years. The goal is from dependency, not from Christ, but from dependency to self-sufficiency economically. And how that looks is different per case in different neighborhoods, so on and so forth. Does that make sense? Does this, how does this resonate with anybody in the room? Yes, sir.
I really appreciated you kind of gave us an example of that weekly program, and what you're, maybe that's the route you would take, but right now you're kind of in the middle where it's kind of a little bit messy. What does the principle of accountability look like for helping right now? Like,
So you said, what is the principle for
yeah,
accountability?
so what kind of takeaway can a church have for accountability as a principle rather than just a specific flavor?
To give you some background, we have 2 deacons,
Mhm.
so we can't do a weekly program.
When we do, we've not just. Bro, come on, man.
I'm not one of them.
I got you. Make that clear, like, oh, that's him. They're slacking, but I'm on point. I think, and again, it's a case-by-case basis, but I think if the goal is truly investing in the neighborhood, how do we walk with this person, this family, to take them to the level that we believe they need to go to, that they may not be able to even see. And now I don't know how your church is, but I struggle. I'll admit the fact that our churches, we got 1,000 members and we've had like 10 adult baptisms in the last so many years. I think that's but we always develop these systems and structures about discipleship and mentoring through the session and other things. We don't always do it well, but we still have that there. It's the same about accountability. Like, what is our journey? Is it really about us or them? And part of that is, like, understanding the Imago Dei. We are all made in God's image. And just because I may be working at a church, if you're coming and asking for help, doesn't mean I have this on lock. Doesn't mean I understand. And that is one of the hardest things, not to come in with a paternalistic approach. It's hard because they're coming in asking you. It's hard not to just go, oh yeah, do these 3 things and you'll be okay. So really getting to know the individual, because again, it's case by case. But now, what I'm talking about also is people that are not members of the congregation. People that are members of the congregation, if you come in and ask for help today, that doesn't mean we want to wait a year. Okay, we develop different plans for those that are part of our congregation. As Randy was saying, especially the household of faith. So these are the walk-ins that you come in contact with. The other folks that come in and are part of our church and they're part of our body, hey, we'll help you like 3 times in a year, and then we sit down with the deacons and develop a plan. Like, okay, bring your bills, let's talk about this. Okay, now we've reached a level that seems it's becoming in crisis. It's more than you just lost your job, so on and so forth. So there's different levels of interaction. So in the church, then we develop a plan. We have a deacon, we have an elder, we have a teaching elder, and we sit down, everybody, okay, what does it look like for us to actually love on this family, because this is becoming a different situation. But for those outside, that's harder on the accountability end, because you're like, hey, let's go to this certain place to eat. Everybody has a different personality. For me, those are things that are natural for me. But so if those who don't know anything about Huntsville, we are like the engineering capital of the world. We have more engineers per capita than any city in the country. And they're almost all rocket engineers. So you just can't say, this ain't rocket science. They're like, what does that mean? They're rocket scientists. So if you don't know engineers, especially those that are rocket scientists, they are very introverted. Like, it is amazing I really dislike writing some papers sometimes because they go, oh, you got a comma splice. That's what we're going to debate. So saying, hey, just find somebody and take them out to lunch is like me asking them to like run 30 miles in 10 minutes. They're like, that is not my personality. So I kind of joke and say, you do you, but that is true. Like, you do you, like whatever it is that you feel comfortable. Sometimes you may have to get outside what your normal, but you got to own who you are, because if not, it's going to come off not being authentic, and people can smell that out. If you're just doing it because they believe that, okay, you're kind of pandering to me or whatever, that it's not probably going to end well. Somebody's going to get hurt. It could be you or it could be them. It might not physically hurt, but emotionally hurt. You feel like they would take advantage of you, or you feel like, or they could feel like you're taking advantage and using you. Just like as Randy said, I shouldn't have said, all these guys are, been in jail, been incarcerated. I'm sure one of those guys is like, yo, really, bro? Like, I'm trying to date this girl over here. I was going to tell her my own time, and now, thank you. It could be anything that you have no clue. But asking them, like, hey, question, is this okay? What do you think? And letting them be able to speak into that journey. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I heard you and Randy both talk about having a set of policies for a diaconate.
Yes.
And I think that would be great. Could you point us to a resource or two for that?
Well, yeah, Randy's book.
Okay.
It's only $10 right here.
Right, yeah,
We just call, we
I'm
just
the straight man.
Yes, no, we don't call that Randy's book, we just call it retirement plan. So we're like, Plan B. But, yeah, I mean, there are, and again, we're such a short time, it's hard to go
I
through.
mean, yeah, resources.
But there are like some in the back of his book.
Okay.
But there are other locations. And also I can give you my email address, whatever, we can have those conversations.
Okay.
Because part of it is not, and I know the PCA loves curriculum, and go like, man, Park Cities did this, and Trinity did that, and this church does that. We're gonna do the same thing. That may not translate to your situation. So maybe 60% might, maybe 5, maybe 8, I don't know. But part of it is knowing, again, the skill sets you have. Because again, like you have 2 deacons, to say, hey, Wednesday night at 5:30, we're always gonna meet. You're like, yeah, bro, I got a family, that ain't gonna happen. So it's different for different locations. But yeah, but we can definitely, we want you to have those.
Cool.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments, dissertations? Okay, because it's a quarter till, and I don't want to go over too bad, because, you know, I was a school teacher, so I learned a long time ago, people will only, your mom will only comprehend what your butt can endure.
Right.
So once you start seeing people squirm, you're like, hey, well, thank y'all so much for coming. So, but thank y'all so much for coming.